Welcome, Alex Zastre, to Tuesday Triggers podcast. Probably a lot of people know you for a lot of different reasons. You have, I would say, a great social media presence. That's like absolutely hilarious, but also drives like really good content and really good thought and like lots of information. You've got Savvy Capital. You've got Thor's Hammer. Lo and behold, turns out you were a semi-pro skier before this. You got like this crazy ass life story. So why don't you give like a couple minutes intro of who you are, what you've done, what you're working on? Would love to let the people know.
Percent. My name is Alex Zastre, obviously. Started as a semi-pro skier, started in skiing, created a media production company. We were the third biggest media production company on the internet for a certain period of time when I was like 15 to 18. And just as a means of trying to make some money in skiing, because it's obviously not a very lucrative, sport, I started selling clothing, and that was kind of my foray into making money online, I guess. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed. And I ended up, I was making money off of that, but not enough to really get by, I would say. So then I started thrifting designer clothing and reselling it. And then I literally stumbled across social media marketing because my buddy figured out how to make meme pages. And so we sold Instagram followers. And then I learned paid ads. And then I learned outbound marketing. And I already had the acquisition channels thanks to my buddy Lewis. He taught me how to run ads. And so that business did over 100K in the first year, just simply because we had paid acquisition already set up just from the get-go. And once I did that, I was like, okay, I should go all in. And then I had a client at the time that was the Kardashians Jewelers. He wanted a large-scale influencer campaign in order to drive more followers. I drafted it all out, put together what the return would be from something like that, what kind of scale we would need to work at. And he said, fuck you, that's way too much money. So I said, okay, where else could this apply? And then Wall Street bets happened. And I was like, there's probably a need for this in finance for influencer marketing. Lo and behold, there was a need for it. Kind of went out on the Howe Street in Vancouver, which is like the financial district, and just pitched it to a bunch of different guys. And eventually I got a client. And so once I had my first client, it was kind of game on from there. Got paid more than I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, well, I guess I'm in finance now. I'm a finance marketer. And so I did that for a while, a lot of IPOs, and then got hooked up with a merchant bank because they did a public deal, but they also had private deals. Then I started raising money privately. And then, fast forward to today, I've been raising money privately for about 2 years, done over 200 mil in private raises, done probably over $500 million in term sheets. We should be at over $500 million raised by kind of mid Q1, end of Q1. And then recently acquired Thor's Hammer because obviously, the main driver for these meetings we were setting up with institutional investors was through email. And so I wanted to vertically integrate, purchase Thor's Hammer as a way to do that because it was the only available option other than Superwave, which obviously was not for sale, that had kind of this backdoor into Microsoft, and been scaling that since. And then, we have the mentorship as well, Dealmaker, where we show other guys how they can set up a capital advisory firm within compliance. Just as I have, I'm a licensed broker in the States, FINRA registered broker at my SIE, my Series 63 and my Series 82. It's kind of what I've been helping other guys do is figure out how to set those kinds of things up as well. And then raising money through the investment bank for businesses. And then, running Thor's Hammer as well.
That's awesome, man. That is one hell of a journey. I love meeting like people who started young and they're crazy talented because I know that I was such an idiot when I was that age. I mean, I was an idiot for like for like all of my 20s, maybe leading into my 30s. And now I've created this group of people that are, there's people that are joining or that are being like accepted to the group that are 15, 16 have made $1 million, dude. Like it's
Yeah,
wild. It's crazy. So
it's crazy.
when I was that age, I was like, okay, cool. MySpace is out. I think I started in college in Las Vegas. I started honors business, architecture, and then ended up with 3 art degrees of all things. So like, I think that the world is now opened up to kids that are on the internet and are using it and are like I want to make some money here, which is one hell of a background, bro. So I think that, there's a lot that we could talk about, a ton of directions that we could go, especially being on someone that's involved in capital and being November 5th, 2024, even though you're a Canuck, I know that the markets and everything is that's going to be wild in the next couple of days. But let's talk about cold email, because I want to, you create a lot of content on like how to be successful, how to use it, how to frame your offer, all of these things. Well, everything's changing towards the end of 2024, and it's going to get harder in 2025. What do you think people need to know in the next year to, I don't know, use cold email successfully, to not, to still have the same performance, or try and maintain like a, how can people use cold email successfully in 2024 and going into 2025 as things are changing?
100%. I think the biggest thing is just, good email marketing practice is now more important than it's ever been. Making sure that you're spin taxing, making sure that getting those AI first lines in there, and making sure that you have solid lists, I think are the biggest things. And then making sure you have proper email infrastructure. Like, things change so rapidly, as you know, and one day Microsoft is more difficult to send emails to, and the next day Gmail is more difficult to send emails to. I mean, right now, as we sit here, Gmail's easier than Microsoft, but that could change in 2 weeks, because there's a team of 10 guys at both companies constantly trying to figure out how to stop guys like us from doing what we do.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing you can do is find a solid infrastructure. And I know that most of the big players that I talk to, at least, they'll have multiple email infrastructures, and even as a guy that owns any email infrastructure, I would still say, like, diversify. Make sure that you're set up for success, because the space changes so often. And most of the big guys that I know, they do have their hands in multiple email infrastructure pockets, trying to make sure that no matter what, they're kind of primed for success. And then also, I think something that a lot of people overlook is spam words, because it's not really a problem when you're doing small scale, but when you're at large scale, it's something that becomes really prevalent. All of these little things that you might, there's guys I know that ram cold email without spin tax. Same thing. You're fine with low sending volume, but as soon as you start sending large volume, like, you have a lot more liability and a lot more potential for things to go wrong. So making sure that you practice, just solid, good, basic email best practice at all times is, I think, probably the number one way to do this. And if you look at email from the business perspective, I think the biggest thing that guys can be doing is going B2B and figuring out new niches, because that's really the issue. There's only so much data at hand. Everybody's using the same databases. So unless you find a new angle or a new market to hit and a new offer that is untouched by the market, it's going to be difficult for you to have success long term.
So how do you, because you're really great at that, right? You post a lot of content about like new angles, new markets, like I think like just all over the board, right? Some are like absolutely like, I mean, crack me up when I go through. What's up?
Yeah. Some of them are outlandish,
outlandish. How do you, what, give us an example of like what a new market might be that someone might crack. Like, again, that you're like, oh, this is just a shower thought, but this would be great.
Yeah, there's so many. And I mean, I did that 30 days on Twitter of, 30 days, 30 offers. And yeah, some of them were outlandish, and it was just me sitting there at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. before I go to bed, just cranking something out to get some Twitter content out. But some of them were really good, and they've been tried by people. Like, the first one I ever did on there was how to sell private jets, broker private jet deals through cold email. One of the guys in mentorship tried it, cranked emails. I mean, the problem for him was he was one of those 16-year-olds you're talking about. So when he got on the meeting, the sales process was a little difficult for him. But hell, if he can learn to do that, he can learn to do anything. I think another big one that I saw somebody try that I posted was brokering luxury retreats for hotels to businesses. So like, businesses always take their staff on retreats. Those are big ticket movements. And if you go out to hotels and say, hey, I can bring you these retreats, which are like the creme de la creme for them, your response rate is going to be insane. And that's what the student saw, was her response rates were insane. And then the response rates from the businesses were also insane, because they're doing these things all the time. And, they're spending a lot of money. They'd love to get a deal. So I think figuring out transactions, and that's really what the core of this is how can you do the same work for somebody that's conducting a way larger transaction? And I usually advise a transaction over $500,000, because that means there's going to be some meat on the bone for you as the middleman. But yeah, I think just brokering large transactions is the single best way to use B2B email. I think a lot of guys have figured that out at this point. But yeah, the thesis itself, I think, is difficult to teach. But in essence, you're looking for large TAM, super high ticket, and not a whole lot of other email marketers in that space. Those are like the three things that make for a perfect niche.
I don't know, man. Like, I'll be honest with you. We have about 25 clients. We're very selective about who we work with. We aren't going for that. And part of the reason, and I have a lot of respect for you in this regard, is like, even like the Savvy Capital stuff, like that's a very complex sale. Like, I don't even know how you begin to unlock and crack how to do that and understand that. So why don't you give us a little insight on that? Like, let's say someone does go find this new big ticket item. How the hell do you figure out how the sales cycle works and dive in like totally balls to the walls?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, look, you have to feel confident that you can do it. You have to like convince yourself that you're the guy for the job. And that confidence, you shouldn't be making things up. Like if you're a competent person and you can do email marketing, you can produce results with email marketing, you can produce meetings, and you're a strong salesperson, then you should be able to succeed. And you need to just have that confidence in yourself. I think that's the number one thing that holds people back. Like the jet sales, like again, most guys would look at that and they'd be like, dude, I can't broker a massive jet transaction. Well, like, fuck you. Yes, you can, And so I think that, and then GPT, like when I started in the private markets, like I'd have Zoom meeting one side, GPT on the other side, on the other monitor, and I would just be cranking away whenever they said something that I didn't quite understand. And then the third thing is education. Like, I'm, like I said at the top of this call, I'm a licensed broker. And it's not like easy. And there's not very many people that have all three of those FINRA licenses. Like really not a lot, because a lot of guys that get licensed work at JP Morgan, work at Goldman Sachs. Like they get public licenses because they start as an analyst and they work their way up. It's pretty regular for somebody to get the private market licenses that I have, unless you work in private equity. But that education has been really crucial. I like people think that a lot of guys, especially in the agency space, think that education is, I don't know, BS for lack of a better word. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, the reason I can come up with offers really well is because I have a bachelor's in business for entrepreneurship specifically, and I learned how to crack a market, how to figure out product market fit, how to figure out what good spaces look like. And then also, I took a lot of economics in school. And so that's the other thing that you need to know is like how supply and demand work in order to work out these offers, especially low supply markets, how that works and how that pans out. And that's the basis of all of this thesis that I have on brokering large transactions is low supply, high demand for the service. And so having that understanding really helps. So yeah, get educated, like take little courses online. There's a lot of free stuff. I taught myself ads by doing free courses online, and same with outbound marketing was through, YouTube and other people that were more educated on the subject than me. So don't shy away from education because Elon Godsey told you that school is a lie. I think lean into it and get as much education as you can. And then when you do have conversations with other people that are also educated, you're speaking at a similar ground level. That's the other thing, right? Sure. Like you guys have a similar base level of understanding about the world and how things operate and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think education is really important as well.
Are you tying this back to just rub salt in the wound of me getting 3 art degrees, or is this intentional?
No, I swear, man. I swear it's not. Don't say, hey, that was time and money well spent, dude. Don't worry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. I did become an international art auctioneer, and I traveled the globe for 10 years and saw 100 countries. So thankfully, I landed okay. But not for a lot of people, it's a lot harder. So last question, because we have a few minutes, and maybe we can do another session again in the coming months. But last question here. What is like a good tech stack, I think, for people in 2024 to 2025 to get started quickly? And what potholes or pitfalls should they avoid in the coming year?
Yeah. Super basic, mine at least, which is, I do pay for PitchBook, so PitchBook is good, but that's pretty pricey for a lot of guys. So I would say Apollo, Smart Lead, and then Thor's Hammer. Like, I don't really know what else you would need in order to make the B2B brokering stuff work. And when I put together those 30 offers, 30 days, that was all that I was using, and Million Verifier to verify leads. And then you're good. Yep. And you're coming in at or under a grand a month with that tech stack, which is, pretty good. And the potholes, I would say, is data is the basis for everything that we do. What you do, what I do, what any B2B marketer does is data. But
Yep.
a lot of guys conflate this need for data with I need to have as many data sources as possible. And I think that that's wrong because most of them are very similar, if not the same. So it's very easy to get lost in like, oh, I should buy Prequint and PitchBook and Crunchbase and like the
Yeah.
reality is that most of it is the same data, just presented in different ways with different ways to flesh through the data. So for guys that are starting out, especially, I would say like, don't get lost in the sauce on data. Really just focus on starting to get stuff out and hitting TAMs that you can access with the data that you do have and then grow from there.
Yep. Awesome, man. Appreciate you. And again, thanks for coming on.